All right, hopefully I got enough power to do this. On Watership Down, oh, actually, it's called Watership Down. Episode 19. What are you smiling about? Episode 19. Fear in the Dark. Fear in the Dark. All right. Maybe the coffee will help me supercharge. Okay, here we go. Get on with the show. The holes certainly were rough. Just right for a lot of vagabonds like us, said Bigwig. But the exhausted and those who wander in a strange country are not particular about their quarters. At least there was room for 12 rabbits, and the burrows were dry. Two of the ones among the thorn trees. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot something here. When Bigwig says vagabonds, under here, note, Bigwig's word was Hazel. Hellessil. Helessil. Helessil.
Helessil.
Helessil?
Helessil.
Helessil? Okay, that's what the old grumpy guy says, Helessil. You'll find that word used in the movies and the TV series if you ever wander to go and watch it, which I rendered in various places in the story as wanderers, scratchers, vagabonds. A Helessil is a rabbit living in the open without a hole. Solitary bucks and unmated rabbits who are wandering do this for quite long periods, especially in summer. Bucks don't usually dig much in any case, although they will scratch shallow shelters or make use of existing holes when they're available. Real digging is done by the most part by does preparing for litters. So there you go. That's what Bigwig was saying. Okay, let's see. Led straight down to burrows scooped out at the top of a chalk subsoil. Rabbits do not line their sleeping places, and a hard, almost rocky floor is uncomfortable for those who are not accustomed to it. The holes in the bank, however, had runs of usual bow shape, leading down to the chalk and then curving up again to burrows with floors of trampled earth. There are no connecting passages, but the rabbits were too worried to care. They slept four to a burrow, snug and secure. Hazel remained awake for some time, licking Buckthorn's leg, which was stiff and tender. He was reassured to find no smell of infection, but all that he had ever heard about rats decided him to see Buckthorn did get a good deal of rest and kept out the dirt until the wound got better. That's the third one of us to get hurt. Still, all in all, things could have been far worse, he thought as he fell asleep. The short June darkness slipped by in a few hours. The light returned early to the high down, but the rabbits did not stir. Well after dawn, they were still sleeping, undisturbed, in a silence deeper than they have ever known. Boy, there's days I had like that. Just slept until somebody woke my dead ass up. Yeah, I need a ride to work. Isn't that right, grumpy old bastard? Yeah.
Plead the fifth.
You please the fifth. Yeah, just like old Blackberry would. I please the fifth. Anyway, nowadays amongst the field and woods, the noise level by the day is high, too high for some kinds of animals to tolerate. A few places far from human noise, cars, buses, motorcycles, tractors, lorries. The sound of housing estate in the morning is audible a long way off. People who record birdsong generally do it very early, before 6 o'clock, if they can. Soon after that, the invasion of distant noise in most woodland become too constant and too loud. During the last 50 years of silence, of much of the country have been destroyed. But here, on Watership Down, they floated up only faint traces of daylight noise below. Hey, she wasn't bad looking. You should have seen the chick that went by. She had a tattoo on her neck, though. Damn. Probably a big bullseye. Anyway, the sun was well up, though not as yet as high as the down, when Hazel awoke. With them in the burrow were Buckthorn, Fiber, and Pipkin. He was nearest to the mouth of the hole and did not wake them as he slipped up the run. Outside, he stopped to pass Haraka. Passing Haraka. Flushed the toilet. Then hopped along the thorn patch to the open grass. Below, the country is covered with morning mist, which was beginning to clear. Here and there, far off, were shapes of trees, roofs, from which streamers of mist trailed down like broken waves pouring from rocks. The sky was cloudless and deep blue. Obviously, they'd never been to LA during the summer. Darkening to a mauve along the whole rim of the horizon. The wind has dropped and the spiders has already gone down into the grass. It was going to be a hot day. Hazel rambled about the usual way that rabbits feed. 5 or 6 slow rocking hops through the grass. A pause to look around, sitting up with ears erect, then busily nibbling for a short time, then follow by another move a few yards. For the first time in many days, he felt relaxed and safe. He began to wonder whether they have much to learn about their new home. Fiber was right, he thought. This is the place for us. But when we need to get used to it, and the fewer mistakes we make, the better. I wonder what, because of rabbits, did make these holes. Did they stop running? Did they just simply move away? If only we can find them, they could tell us a lot. At this moment, he saw a rabbit come rather hastily out of a hole farthest to himself. It was Blackberry. He, too, passed Haraka. Scratched himself, then hopped into the full sunlight and combed his ears. He began to feed. Hazel came up and fell in with him, nibbling along the grass tussocks and wandering on to whatever his friend pleased. They came to a patch of milkwort, a blue as deep as they were the sky, with long stems creeping through the grass, and each minute flowers spreading its 2 upper pedicels like wings. Blackberry sniffed at it. And the leaves were tough and unappetizing. What is this stuff? You know? He asked. No, I don't, said Hazel. I've never seen it before. There's a lot we don't know, said Blackberry. About this place, I mean. The plants are new, the smells are new. We're going to need some new ideas ourselves. Well, You're the fellow for those ideas, said Hazel. I never know anything until you tell me. But you go in front and take the risk first, answered Blackberry. We've all seen that. And now our journey's over, isn't it? This place is safe, as Fiver said it would be. That thing can get near us without our knowing it. That is, as long as we can smell and see and hear. We all can do that. Not when we're asleep. We can't see in the dark. It's bound to be dark at night, said Hazel, and rabbits are going to sleep. In the open? Well, we can go on using these holes if we want to, but I expect a good many will lie out. After all, you can't expect a bunch of bucks to dig. They might make some scrapes or two, like that day when we came over the healer. But they won't do more than that. That's what I've been thinking about, said Blackberry. Those rabbits we left. Cowslip and the rest. A lot of the things they did weren't natural to rabbits. Pushing stones into the earth and carrying food underground. Frick knows what. That Thierra's lettuce was carried underground, if it comes to that. Exactly, don't you see? They altered what rabbits do naturally because they thought they could do better. And if they alter their ways, so can we, if we like. You say buck rabbits don't dig, but nor they do. But they could if they wanted to. Suppose we had a deep, comfortable burrow to sleep in, to be out of bad weather and underground at night. Then we would be safe. And there's nothing to stop us from having them, except buck rabbits don't dig. Nor can't, not won't. What's your idea then? Asked Hazel, half interested and half reluctant. Do you want us to try to turn these holes into a regular warren? No, these holes won't do. It's easy to see why they've been deserted. Only a little way down you come to this really hard white stuff and no one can dig. They must be bitterly cold in the summer and the winter. But there's a wood just over the top of the hill. I caught a glimpse of it last night when we came. Suppose we can go up higher now. Just you and I. Have a look at it? They ran up the summit. The beach hanger lay some little ways off to the southeast, far side of the greasy track along the ridge. There's some big trees here, said Blackberry. The roots must be broken up the ground pretty deep. We could dig holes and be as well off as we ever in the old warren. But if Bigwig and the others won't dig and say they can't, well, it's bare and bleak here. That's why it's lonely and safe, of course. But when bad weather comes, we shall be driven off the hills for sure. It's never entered my head to try to make a lot of bucks dig regular holes, said Hazel doubtfully, as they returned down the slope. Rabbit Kitten needs holes, of course, but do we? We were all born in a warren that was dug before our mothers were born, said Blackberry. We're used to holes. Not one of us ever helped to dig one. And if there ever was a new one, who'd dig it? A doe, I'm quite sure. Myself, that if we don't change our natural ways, we shan't be able to stay here very long. Somewhere else, perhaps, but not here. It means a lot of work. There's Bigwig coming up now with some of the others with them. Why don't we put it to them and see what they say? Oh boy.
Here it comes.
Yep. Especially from Bigwig. Oh shit. Okay. During souffle, however, remember souffle is eating, you know.
Yeah. Lunch meeting.
Yep, lunchtime. However, Hazel mentioned Blackberry's idea to no one but Fiber. Later on, when most of the rabbits were finished feeding, they were either playing in the grass or lying in the sunshine. He suggested they might go across to the hangar, just to see what sort of wood is it. Bigwig and Silver agreed at once, and in the end, no one stayed behind. It was different from the meadow copses they have left. A narrow belt of trees, 400 or 500 yards long, but barely 50 wide, and kind of a windbreak common on the downs. It consisted entirely of well-grown beeches. Beeches, beeches. The great smooth trunks stood motionless in their green shade, the branches spreading flat, one above each other in the crisp, light, dabbled tears. Here we go again. Between the trees, the ground in the open offered hardly any cover. The rabbits were perplexed. They could not make out why the wood was so light and still when they could see so far between the trees. Continuous, gentle rustling of the beech trees' leaves was unlike the sounds they heard in the copse of nut bushes, oak or silver birch. You know, this guy must have a fascination for trees. Really? I mean, does the countryside have like 937 different kind of trees?
Well, Adams was a naturalist.
All right, he was a naturalist. Okay. That explains it.
Yeah.
So apparently the First World War jacked his head up. So he must have took a direct hit to the head somewhere. Moving uncertainly in and out of the edge of the hangar, they came to the northeast corner. Here, there was a bank which they looked out over the empty stretches of the grass beyond. Fiber, absurdly small besides the hulking Bigwig, turned to Hazel with an air of happy confidence. This is the first time I've ever heard this jackass ever be happy about anything.
He got his way, that's why. Fucking hippie mode.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it great?
Isn't this great? Now I get to be a hippie in the grass with no danger. I'm sure Blackberry's right, Hazel, he said. We ought to do our best to make some holes here. I'm ready to try anyway. The others were taken aback. Pipkin, however, readily joined Hazel at the foot of the bank, and soon 2 or 3 more began scratching at the light soil. The digging was easy, although they often broke off to feed or merely sit in the sun. Fucking slackers, just like the city workers. Work for about 20 minutes and then slack off for 3 hours and get paid for it. Then maybe go back and pick up a shovel for a few minutes.
Some of them. Yeah.
Some of them, yeah. Anyway, before midday, Hazel was out of sight and tunneling between the tree roots. The hangar might have little or no undergrowth, but at least the branches gave cover from the sky. And the kessels, they soon realized, were common on this solitude. Although kessels seldom prey on anything larger than a rat, they will sometimes attack young rabbits. No doubt this is why most grown rabbits will not remain under a hovering kestrel. What?
Kestrels are assholes.
Before long, Acorn spot one as it blew up from the south. He stamped and bolted into the trees, followed by other rabbits who were in the open. They had not long come out and resumed digging when they saw another, perhaps the same one, hovering some way off, high over the very fields that they had crossed the previous morning. Hazel placed Buckthorn as sentry while the day's haphazard work went on, and twice more in the afternoon the alarm was given. In the early evening they were disturbed by a horseman cantering along the ridge track that passed the north end of the wood. Otherwise, they saw nothing larger than a pigeon all day. After the horseman has turned south near the summit of the Watership and disappeared in the distance, Hazel returned to the edge of the wood and looked out northward towards the bright, still fields and dim pylon lines stalking away in the distant north of, here we go with this fucking word again, Kingshalier. Just like I said in the last episode, how can you pronounce this? Kings, Kings, C-L-Sil, E-R-E, Erie. King's Celery? King's Celery.
Yep.
Oh, so he named this damn town after celery. And since it's a king-sized big-ass fucking celery.
Yep.
Okay. Well, maybe the rabbits can pronounce that. More than likely we'll eat it. The air was cooler and the sun was beginning once more to reach the north escarpment. Oh, God. I think we've done enough, he said. For today, anyway. I would like to go to the bottom of the hill and find some really good grass. This stuff's all right in its way, but rather thin and dry. Does anybody feel like coming with me? That was Hazel. Bigwig, Dandelion, and Speedwell were ready, but the others preferred to graze their way back to the thorn trees and go underground with the sun. Bigwig and Hazel picked the line that was offered the most cover, with the others following, and they set out in 400 or 500 yards to the foot of the hill. They met no trouble and were soon feeding in the grass at the edge of the wheat field, the very picture of rabbits in the evening landscape. Hazel tried, tired though he was, did not forget to look for somewhere to bolt if there should be an alarm. He was lucky enough to come up on a short length of old undergrown ditch, partly fallen in and so heavy overhung with cow parsley and needles it was almost sheltered as a tunnel, and all four of them made sure they could reach it quickly from the open. That'll be good enough in a pinch, said Bigwig, munching clover and snipping at the fallen bloom from a wayfaring tree. My goodness, we've learned a few things since we left the old warrant, haven't we? More than we've learned in a lifetime back there. And the digging. I bet we'll be flying next, I suppose. Have you noticed that this soil is quite different from the soil in the old warren? It smells differently and it slides and falls quite differently, too. That reminds me, said Hazel. I wanted to ask you. There was one thing at that terrible warren of cowslips I admired so much. The Great Burrow. I would like to copy it. It would be a wonderful idea to have a place underground where everybody can be together, talk and tell stories and so on. What do you think? Could it be done? Bigwig considered. I know this, he said. If you want to make a burrow too big, the roof starts falling in. So if you want a place like that, you'll need something to hold the roof up. that cowslip have? Tree roots. Well, there are those we're digging, but were they the right sort? We better get Strawberry to tell us what he knows about the great burrow. But it may not be much. I'm sure he wasn't alive when it was dug. He may not be dead when it falls in either. That Warren's Thorn as an owl in daylight. He was wise to leave when he did. Twilight had fallen over the cornfield, and although the long red rays still lit the upper down, the sun had set below. An uneven shadow of the hedge had faded and disappeared. There was a cool smell of moisture and approaching darkness. A cock shafter. Wait a minute. Let me check that. Cock shafter? Hold on. A cock chaffer. Chafer. Chaffer?
Schaefer.
Shaper. A cockchafer. Not a cockshaft. Oh, boy. All right, let's forget about that. The implications, right? Never mind. Let's forget about the cock. The grasshoppers had fallen silent. The owls will be out, said Bigwig. Let's go up again. At this moment, from out of the darkening field, there came a sound of a stamp on the ground. It was followed by another. Closer to them, they caught a glimpse of a white tail. They both immediately ran to the ditch, and now they had to use it in earnest and found it even narrower than they thought. There was just room to turn around at the far end. As they did so, Speedwell and Dandelion tumbled in behind them. "When is that?" asked Hazel. "What did you hear?" "There's something coming at the end of the hedge," replied Speedwell. "And an animal, making a lot of noise, too." Did you see it?" "No, I couldn't smell it either. It's downwind. I heard it was plain enough, though." "I heard it, too," said Dandelion. "Something fairly big as a rabbit anyway, moving clumsily but trying to keep concealed. Or it seems to me." "A humba?" "No, that we should have smelled," said Bigwig. "Wind or no wind. From what you say, sounds like a cat. I hope it's not a stoat. Horie, you ember hyar. What a nuisance." Now remember, it means, hey, stinking enemy. Or stinking thousand. That's what that meant.
Yep.
We better sit tight for a bit, but get ready to bolt if it spots us. They waited, and soon it grew dark. Only the faintest light came through the tangled summer growth above them. At the far end of the ditch, there was so much undergrowth that they couldn't see out of it. But the place where they had come in showed a patch of sky, an arc of very dark blue. As it passed, a star crept out among the overhanging grasses. It seems to pulsate in rhythm as faint and uneven as that of the wind. At length, Hazel turned his eyes away from watching it. Well, we can snatch some sleep here, he said. The night's not cold. Whatever you heard, we better not risk going out. Listen, said Dandelion. Hear that? For a moment, Hazel could hear nothing, and then he caught a distant but clear sound. A kind of wailing and crying, wavering and intermittent. Although it did not sound like any sort of hunting call, it was unnatural that filled him with fear. As he listened, it ceased. What in Fritz's name makes that kind of noise? Said Bigwig, his great fur cap hackling between his ears. A cat? Said Speedwell, wild-eyed. That's no cat, said Bigwig, his lips drawn back in a stiff and unnatural grimace. That's no cat. Don't you know what it is? Your mother... He broke off. Then he said in very low, Your mother told you, didn't she? No, cried Dandelion. It's some bird. Some rat wounded? Bigwig stood up, and his back arched and his head nodded on his stiffened neck. The black rabbit of Inlay, he whispered. What else in a place like this? Don't talk like that, said Bigwig. He could feel himself trembling and bracing his legs against the side of the narrow cut. Suddenly the noise sounded again, nearer. Now there was no mistake. What they had heard was the voice of a rabbit, but changed out of all recognition. It had come from cold spaces of dark sky outside. So unearthly and desolate was the sound. The first, there was only wailing, and then distinct, beyond mistaking, they all heard words. Zorn, Zorn, cried the dreadful squealing voice. Oh, Dad. Oh, Zorn. Now down here in the notes, Zorn means finished or destroyed in the sense of some terrible catastrophe. It's a rabbit language thing. Dandelion whispered. Bigwig was scuffling into the ground. Be quiet, said Hazel. And stop kicking that earth over me. I want to listen. At that moment, quite distinctly, the voice cried, Thelelai! Oh, Thelelai! At this, all four rabbits felt a trance of utter panic. They grew rigid. Then Bigwig, his eyes set in a fixed, glazed stare, began to jerk his way up the ditch towards the opening. You have to go, he muttered, so thickly that Hazel could hardly catch the words. You have to go when he calls you. Hazel felt so much frightened he could no longer collect his wits. On the riverbank, his surroundings became unreal and dreamlike. Who or what was calling Bigwig by name? How could any living creature in this place know his name? Only one idea remained to him. Bigwig must be prevented from going out, for he was helpless. He scrambled past them and pressed him up against the side of the ditch. Stay where you are, he said, panting. Whatever sort of rabbit it is, I'm going to go see for myself. Then, his legs almost giving away beneath him, he pulled himself out into the open. For a few moments, he could see little or nothing, but the smells of Dewel and elder bloom were unchanged. His nose brushed up against the cool grass blades. He sat up and looked about him. There was no creature nearby. Who's there? He said. There was silence, and he's about to speak again when the voice replied, Zorn! Oh, Zorn! It had come to the hedge along the side of the field. Hazel turned towards the sound and in a few moments made out under a clump of headlock a hunched shape of a rabbit. He approached it and said, Who are you? There was no reply as he hesitated. He heard a movement behind him. I'm here, Hazel, says Dandelion in a kind of a choking grasp. Together! They went closer, and the figure did not move as they came up. In the faint starlight, they saw a rabbit, as real as themselves. A rabbit in the last stages of exhaustion. Its back legs trailing behind a flattened rump as though paralyzed. A rabbit that stared wide-eyed from one side to the other, seeing nothing, but yet finding no respite from its fear. Then fell into licking wretchedly at one ripped, bloody ear that drooped across its face. The rabbit suddenly cried and wailed as though entreating the thousand to come from every quarter to rid it of its misery, too terrible to be borne. It was Captain Holly of the Saddleford Owsla. And that is the end of episode 19. All right. The episode called A Fear in the Dark. Any bitches, gripes, moans, grumbles, rumbles, and what the hell overs.
No grumbles.
Nothing to add?
Not on that one.
Not on that one. This guy's so boring. He's become boring now. He's mostly focused on his tank games.
No, I'm not being boring. I've been thinking about attacking.
Yeah, he's thinking about tanks. He doesn't like this book called Watership Down. Anyway, Jeff says, oh, well, too goddamn bad. He's just waiting for his great moment to do the LL or Raw stuff. Anyway, this is me, and this is episode 19. Huh?